color-coded notes. She killed it on the NCLEX, and now she's working at a large level 1 trauma hospital. She's a charge nurse. Christy finds out that you're struggling with pharmacology, and really, who isn't? So she takes a whole week off of work. She pulls out all of her notes from school. She pulls out all her books, all her old PowerPoint slides, and starts making this list of medications. She starts to add meds onto this list that she saw in the NCLEX, meds that she's seen working on the floor, meds that you have to know to keep your patients safe. Anything she saw recurring in her notes, meds you had to know for your school exams. And when she's done, there are 140 must-know meds on that list. She considers adding a few, rounding it out, making it a nice, beautiful 150, but no, because there are 140 must-know medications. She fleshes out this list of medications. She pores over all the interactions, all the contraindications, and she starts pulling out the things that you have to know instead of trying to memorize every single med. Think about trying to learn every single med that causes nausea, because let's face it, it's most of them. Now tell me, would you drop everything to spend some time with her and to copy down every single part of that list? Look to your left, look to your right. Would you kill for that list? No, I'm just kidding. All right. You guys have seen this picture earlier today. It's dear to my heart as well. If you haven't guessed, the story I tell about Christy, it's based on a real story. It's based on the story of John. When he was going through nursing school, he was really shocked that some teachers seemed like they had it out to make things more complicated, like they were trying to hide the most important information from you versus pulling it out and helping you identify it. And he did not want anybody else to have to go through that experience. So he literally sat with pages and pages and books sprawled out on the floor, working at this desk, finding those things that you really had to know to be successful. Along with this book, he created the cheat sheet, the orange one that I passed out for you guys today. That's a list of 50 of the most commonly prescribed medications. And it's so helpful to really just be able to focus and know those things that you need to know. So my goal today is to show you the 10 pro tips for NRSNG, and the reason I tell this story is to give you an idea of how we choose our content. It's a big process, but it is one of the most important steps. Think of us as your Christy. And as a member of NRSNG, you literally have an army of nurses, the best nurses in the world, in your pocket. So pro tip number 1, it's our content magic. The first step is only the beginning, but it's not enough, okay? We don't just pull out the most important information, we also create materials to teach it to you in an easy-to-understand way. So I want to show you 2 very important principles that we use to create our content magic. The first one is based on a great quote from one of the most amazing thinkers of all time, Albert Einstein. Okay, and he says that any intelligent fool can make things bigger, can make things more complex, but it takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. To make things more simple, you truly must understand it in a deep way. Okay, so for each topic, we created videos that tell you the why. Videos that answer your questions. So that you can create this framework in your mind. So when somebody asks you for the side effects of a beta blocker, you can say, well, I know the beta blockers act here, I know that this body system does this, and you can start to create that list in your own mind. The next principle I want to talk about is called the 80-20 principle. It is also called the Pareto principle. It is named after Pareto, who was an Italian economist who observed this. And this principle says that 80% of your results come from just 20% of your effort. And it's amazing because you can observe it in both natural and social phenomenon. For example, he observed it when he was looking at wealth in Italy. He noticed that 80% of the wealth was held by just 20% of the population. He also, oddly enough, noticed in his garden. So he had some pea pods, and he noticed that 20% of the pea pods had 80% of the peas. So if you had 100 pea pods, 300 peas, you would assume there's 3 in each, but that's not what we see. We see some that have 10 and some that have none. Okay? So we take this concept and we're going to apply it to content. Will you guys say this with me? I focus on what matters. And instead of trying to memorize all of it and losing half of it, including some of the most important stuff, what if instead you could just focus on the stuff that you really had to know? I will never ask you to memorize the entire Davis drug guide. And honestly, if you tried, what you actually retain may be meds that you will never need to know about. And instead, practice 80-20, focus on the things you really need to know. Okay? Focus on what matters the most. All right, principle number 2. So that first one was a long one, but we'll keep going on. Number 2, our second pro tip, is to team up on study plans. But before I start this, I kind of want to know where you guys are at a little bit with this. How many of you are using the NRSNG system? Number 1, go ahead and raise your hands. And number 2, how many of you have actually created a study plan or even know what that is? Okay, so there's definitely a few less, so I just want to walk through a little bit really quick about what a study plan is so that you guys know. But basically, study plans give you control over what and when you study. So it's a place for you to take the lessons that you want from our system, package them all together, put them in whatever order you want, put a due date on it, and decide this is what I'm going to focus on, this is what I'm going to study, and you can kind of organize it in your own way. So Team Up on Study Plans is about getting together with a group of your friends, pulling out your syllabus for the semester, going over what next test is coming up. You can literally just split out different parts of your syllabus and say, okay, you create a lesson plan for this section, you create one for this section, and then you guys can share them with each other. So I'll show you where to do that, so that if you already have a system or if down the road you get one. So those little 3 dots in the corner, as soon as you click on them, you'll see this little pop-up show up, and you'll click on the word share, and you'll get a URL that you can text message, email, Slack, whatever, a message to anybody that you want to, all right? So that's a way that you can work together and use the system to be a little more efficient there. Pro tip number 3 is our MPQ Statistics. So NPQ is our nursing practice questions. It's our big question bank. And what we do with our statistics is we break them down into, number 1, nursing categories, and then also NCLEX categories. So you can go through and look at, based on all the questions you've taken, where are my areas of weakness? Where are my areas of strength? What am I doing well on? And can focus your study time on the things that you really need to focus on. Our number 4 pro tip goes along with those statistics because we want to make sure that you know what your benchmark is. What are you aiming for when you're actually looking at those statistics? So when you're looking at your nursing practice questions reports, you want to aim for a 55 to 60%. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit more in detail, but I want you to look at these 2 different examples. If you look at this, it says my oncology report, I'm getting 71%. So it looks like I'm doing phenomenally. And cardiac, I'm only at 51. But be careful. If you've only taken a couple questions in any one of your categories, don't put too much stock on that percentage. You want to make sure you have a nice sample size on there. Out of 7 questions, I might have just gotten lucky. It might have just been that I had just watched the lesson recently and the information's fresh, but down the road, it may not be my biggest area of strength. So make sure that you've taken enough practice questions to really get some solid data so that when you're looking at that 55 to 60%, it's a little more accurate for you. Our 5th pro tip is our test-taking course. This is really a great little gem inside of the Academy, but it is often overlooked. Of all of our courses, because it starts with a T, it is in the very, very bottom right-hand corner, and it's not seen a lot. But it has some really great stuff in it. So right in the menu, you can kind of see right at the top, this is not just for when you're taking exams, not just for the NCLEX. This is really a part of this can be used throughout your entire journey. The very first section actually has some tips for time management, has some study tips, and also some goal setting. So you can really use the beginning part throughout your entire journey, and then also just understanding these nursing type questions because they're so unique. They're so much different than any other type of test question that is out there. Really understanding what it is based on and how to answer those questions so that you can be successful there. The image that I've pulled up on this screen, the 6 question traps, is one of my favorite. It's the very last in the 3rd section. It's the very last lesson. This one I think is really, really helpful when you're looking at any of your question results, is to make sure that you understand why you're getting questions wrong. Is it because you don't have a strong grasp on the content yet, or are you maybe just falling into some of these common test-taking traps? Making sure that you have some tools to prevent those traps, and that you can identify it, fix that if that's the reason, or if you're weak on the content, that you can go back in and review that content and strengthen there. Okay? So that's our test-taking course. Number 6 is our filters. This goes along with our study plan. So this is when you're building a study plan. This will help you find the material that you need. So number 1, of course, we have our search. So you can type in very specific stuff into our search, but the filters are really helpful if you want to pull in a lot of information based on maybe a broad topic. So if you're filtering by course, the very first one up there, it's for broad topics. For example, if you want to find everything we have on fluid and electrolytes or on cardiac or something like that, great filter there. You can apply the filters with your search. So let me give you an example of that. If you're looking for some sort of heart defect, but you actually only want it in children, not in adults, then you can search that specific term and add the filter of pediatrics, and then you would only pull in cardiac on children, okay? The second filter is concept. So if you are in a concept-based nursing program, you will love this. And if you don't know what concepts are, then you're probably not in a concept-based nursing program. But if you are, you can use that. And same thing, you can add those filters. You can mix filters together. And then our last filter by book is we pulled and we found the most common, most used nursing textbooks. And so what we did was for each chapter or each section in the book, you can actually pull in every lesson that we have on those specific textbooks, okay? So if your syllabus, as we were talking about looking at those syllabus, if your syllabus says that you need to know chapter 2, chapter 9, and chapter 5 for the next exam, well, this will help you find out what you actually need to study for those chapters, okay? Our next pro tip, number 7, is our pre-made study plans. So this is hidden right at the bottom corner of our study plan section. It's just in the bottom left. And these are already made for you. Some of them are just based on our general courses, like cardiac, things like that. So you could always just, use the course for that as well. But there's a couple of these that are a little unique. So we have a pre-nursing one. So I know I saw earlier on today, some of you raised your hand that you're not in nursing school yet. And so for pre-nursing students, you can pull this up, and we definitely have some material that you can look at, some tips and things to get started with. There's also some NCLEX study plans, and these are my favorite. These NCLEX study plans, the very first lesson in each of these study plans, there's 4 of them, has a lesson that has some cheat sheets, and one of those cheat sheets is a calendar. This calendar actually says, take this many questions, start with this content, take a brain break this day. And with this calendar, we actually have them broken out by how much time you have. So if you're a month away, if you're just a couple weeks away, if you're a few months away, you can find the one that's most relevant to you and start to kind of build your schedule around this calendar. Okay, so it tells you, again, what lessons, how many questions, all of that built into one. Our number 9 pro tip is our adaptive SimCLEX. So SimCLEX actually stands for Simulation NCLEX, and SimCLEX is adaptive just like the NCLEX. So when you start taking questions, as you get questions either right or wrong, it will start either increasing the difficulty or decreasing the difficulty, okay? It is a 75 to 265 question exam. And as you are going along, once you've passed 75 questions, if you are above the passing standard and it is 95% confident that you're going to pass, then you'll get a passing, okay? So this is a real chance to get a real feel of what the NCLEX is going to feel like on test day. So great, you can go in and take it several times. Fun thing there. So this is what it looks like, nice and ugly like the NCLEX. The SimCLEX stats look very similar to our nursing practice questions. Okay, so you actually get a breakdown by nursing category, by NCLEX category. You can review all of your questions and the rationale behind it. So when you're looking and you're trying to say, Okay, well, I want to know why I got these questions wrong. You can dig in, you can review, you can look for those test-taking traps, you can review the content that you're weak on, and really use this to drive your study plan, okay, and your plan. I need you guys to do a couple things for me. The first one I need you to do is take out your phone. Oh, awkward. Did you guys already have it out? All right, I need you to take out your phone, and I would like you guys, if you don't already have it, I'd love for you guys to get the NRSNG app, okay? The app is free, and this is what it looks like, so if you don't have it, you can make sure you're downloading the right thing. But if you have this app, it is literally like walking around with your Christie in your pocket, okay? So this gives you access to all of our lessons, and there's lots of practice questions in there. Real fun app that you can download and get access to. The second thing that I'd like you to do is to find that 3x5 note card that was on your table or that was passed out to you when you first got here. I'd like you guys to take it out and write on it one thing that you'd like to use from class today. So I brought up the pro tips again in case you wanted a reminder. Just write down one thing that you'd like to try. Guys, I want to finish up. And I want to tell you something very important. We see something in each of you. Okay? John does. Nicole does. Tammy does. I do. Your friend Christy, she sees something special in you. We know that this journey is a hard one. The struggles I'm facing, the chances I'm taking sometimes might knock me down, but no, I'm not breaking. I may not know it, but these are the moments that I'm gonna remember most, yeah. I gotta keep going, and I gotta be strong. Just keep pushing on. Keep pushing on, you guys.